Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 19th of April 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this editorial talks about is the Libyan crisis. However, it should be understood that this editorial in itself is much more relevant for those who are pursuing and preparing for the optional subject political science and international relations, especially the second section of this editorial on how humanitarian interventions that are currently being undertaken by Western powers is a post-Cold War phenomenon. Now, what we'll do in today's section is get a brief understanding of the Libyan crisis and also get a brief understanding as to what the author means by saying that humanitarian interventions are basically a post-Cold War phenomenon. Now we'll try to understand it from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section International Relations and within the subsection Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed Countries on India's Interest. Now this intervention within Libya currently does not have any form of direct impact on India's interest, and therefore what we're largely going to understand are the policies and politics of developed countries within Libya itself. Now let us first get a brief understanding of the political geography of Libya. Now Libya in itself is located in northern Africa and is bordered by the country of Algeria, Niger, Chad, Sudan and Egypt, apart from also sharing a border with Tunisia. Apart from this, Libya also has a coastal border with the Mediterranean Sea. Now knowing who are Libya's neighbors becomes relevant when we further understand about the current Libyan crisis. Now what had happened is that in 2011, a civilian revolt began from the city of Benghazi, which is located in eastern Libya. Now this revolt that began in the Benghazi city of Libya caused the Arab Spring within Libya itself. Now this revolt that began in Benghazi within Libya was against Muhammad Gaddafi. Now this Arab Spring which had overtaken Libya against the dictatorship of Muhammad Gaddafi was part of the larger Arab Spring which had happened in northern Africa. Now this Arab Spring in northern Africa began from the country of Tunisia and soon spread to Egypt and then to Libya. Now soon after this Arab Spring began against the dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi, a United Nations Security Council resolution was passed. Now in this resolution of the United Nations Security Council, it had asked for a ceasefire within Libya, a no-fly zone over the Libyan airspace, and the protection of civilians by the Muammar Gaddafi government. Now you need to understand that this United Nations Security Council resolution was mainly led by the Western countries. However, what happened soon afterwards is that Muammar Gaddafi agreed to the three demands which were put up in the United Nations Security Council resolution. Now what happened soon afterwards is that these Western countries, which were France, United Kingdom and the United States, attacked the forces of Muammar Gaddafi and led a military intervention within the country of Libya. Now what you need to understand that this military intervention which was led by the Western countries had no support by the United Nations Security Council and was not even an option in the resolution that was also passed by the United Nations Security Council. Now this military intervention in Libya by the Western powers led to extreme chaos within Libya. Now what happened soon afterwards was that a weak government of the National Accord was formed within Libya. Now what needs to be understood is that this National Accord government which was formed in Libya and still administers the government of Libya was a weak government whereby it consisted of a weak coalition of warlords, militants, moderate Islamists, secessionists, monarchists, and this coalition in itself was divided on regional and ethnic lines. Now it is within that context that we come to today. Now what has happened now is that General Khalifa Haftar, who is the head of the Libyan National Army, has taken control over east of Libya. Now again if you take a look at this map, now eastern Libya consists of all the major oil fields that are present in the country of Libya. Now this person, General Khalifa Haftar, had earlier helped Muammar Gaddafi seize power in Libya in 1969. However, soon afterwards, General Khalifa Haftar was exiled to the United States in the 1980s, but returned to Libya in 2011 to overthrow the government of Muammar Gaddafi. Now what is happening now is that the army of General Khalifa Haftar is trying to overtake Libya and again trying to form a military dictatorship within Libya. Now, this conflict between the weak National Accord government of Libya and the army of General Khalifa has led to the new Libyan crisis. And according to the author, what is again happening is that the Western powers and also the Arab coalition are again trying to militarily intervene within Libya. Now, what is being seen is that the Arab coalitions, which is being led by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and is also being supported by Egypt, are currently supporting the army of General Khalifa Haftar. And one of the main reasons as to why they're supporting him is because the army of General Khalifa Haftar control the major oil fields within Libya itself. And similarly, what is also being seen is that the Western powers are also ensuring that their interests within the oil fields of Libya are protected by General Khalifa Haftar. So now hopefully up till here you've gotten a brief understanding as to what is the new Libyan crisis. And hopefully you've also gotten a brief understanding on how the Arab Spring led to the Western-led intervention within Libya and then the removal of Muammar Gaddafi and then the formation of a weak government within Libya and now the rise of the army of General Khalifa Haftar, whereby this army of General Khalifa Haftar is now trying to overtake Libya and has already overtaken the major oil fields within eastern Libya and is thereby now leading to a new Libyan crisis. And this new Libyan crisis may again lead to military intervention by Western powers and the Arab coalition within Libya itself. Now, within the second section of this editorial, the author talks about the military interventions which is currently being undertaken by the Western powers. Now, what the author is trying to say is that after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, it began the period of the unipolarity of the United States. Now, what does unipolarity mean? Now, before 1991, there were two major powers within the world. One was the United States and second was the Soviet Union. And both of them were superpowers and two major centers of power within the world, and therefore the world order was considered as bipolar. However, after collapse of the Soviet Union, only one superpower was left, and this form of world order is known as unipolarity. And what was seen after 1991 was that the United States was the sole superpower within the world. Now, what was seen afterwards was that there was increased intervention by Western powers in other countries, whereby the Western powers took military intervention within Afghanistan, within Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, and several other countries. Now, what was seen within the military intervention within Iraq, within Yemen, within Libya was that this military intervention was undertaken without the support of the United Nations Security Council. Now, the main justification which was given by the Western powers for these military interventions was that they wanted to ensure security of the international world order and also on the grounds of humanitarian protection. However, according to most scholars, the main reasons of military interventions which were undertaken by the United States within Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and others was the protection of oil supplies. Now, according to the author, what is currently being seen is that several other countries or coalition of countries are undertaking military interventions also without the support of the United Nations Security Council, whereby it is being seen that the Arab coalition, which is led by the Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, have already undertaken military intervention within Yemen. And similarly, they're also going to undertake military intervention within the country of Libya. Similarly, it has also been seen that Russia has undertaken military intervention within Syria, Ukraine, and several other countries. And therefore, what is currently being seen is that there is a growing trend of other countries undertaking military interventions in other countries without the support of the United Nations Security Council. And the main justification which has been given by such Arab coalition, Russia, for undertaking these military interventions is because the Western powers, especially the United States, have undertaken military interventions without having the support of the international community in the United Nations. Now, according to the author, these military interventions have diluted the mandate and the working of the United Nations Security Council, which was originally supposed to ensure international peace and international security. And according to the author, this dilution of the United Nations Security Council was first led by the Western powers, especially the United States, and is now moving to other centers of power, such as the Arab coalition and Russia. Now, this was the main crux of the second section of this editorial. whereby the military interventions undertaken by Western powers such as in Iraq, Yemen, and Libya, without having the support of the United Nations Security Council, also led to other centers of power such as the Arab coalition and Russia to also undertake military interventions without having the support of the United Nations Security Council. And according to the author, these interventions have diluted the mandate and the working of the United Nations Security Council, that was the original body to ensure international peace and international security. So now hopefully up till here you've understood both the aspects of this editorial. First with regards to the new Libyan crisis, and secondly with regards to military interventions. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from page 9. Now the main focus of this editorial is quite small. Now it is generally seen that during winters, the pollution levels in the Delhi NCR region increases tremendously. And one of the main reasons as to why the pollution in Delhi NCR region increases tremendously in the winter seasons is due to stubble burning. However, according to the author, reducing pollution is not on the agenda of any political party in the current election season. And within that regard, what needs to be understood from this article is that the author has given several measures that can be undertaken to reduce pollution, especially within the Delhi NCR region. Now, before understanding the measures which have been highlighted by the author, it is important to understand as to what is stubble burning. And information with regards to stubble burning has already been covered in a much previous DNS video. And therefore, what we're going to do in today's section is first revise about stubble burning and then understand the various measures which have been highlighted by the author to reduce pollution. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is what is stubble burning. Now, stubble burning in simple terms means removing the residue that is left behind by the paddy crop. And this removal of the residue of paddy crops is usually required in areas that use combined harvesting method. Now, combines are basically machines separate the grain from the ground. However, the use of this combined machine leads to a problem wherein this machine does not cut close enough to the ground and thereby leaves a small stubble in the field. Now, this small stubble that the machine leaves over in the field, the farmer has no use for. And therefore, there is pressure on the farmer to sow the next crop. And for the farmer, the quickest and the cheapest solution to remove this stubble from the ground is to clear the field by burning the stubble. So now hopefully you've understood as to what is stubble burning. Where in simple terms, it is the act of removing the residue of the paddy crop. Wherein this residue of the paddy crop is removed through the use of combines machine. Wherein these machines separate the grain from the ground. However, after these machines separate the grain from the ground, it leaves a stubble in the ground. And the farmer has no use for this stubble. And the quickest and the cheapest solution for the farmer to remove this stubble is to burn it. And this burning of stubble in Punjab and Haryana cause a lot of air pollution throughout northern India. Now the second aspect with regards to stubble burning that you should understand is what are the available solutions so that farmers do not have to rely upon stubble burning. Now one of the most efficient technology to counter stubble burning is the turbo happy seeder. Now turbo happy seeder is basically a machine that cuts and uproots the stubble, and this machine can be used with a tractor so as to remove the stubble from the ground. And apart from this, the turbo happy seeder can also be fitted with the super straw management system. And both of these technologies can replace the stubble burning that currently exists in parts of northern India. Now the main drawback of both of these technology of the turbo happy seeder and the super straw management system is that both of them are at very high cost for the farmer, wherein both of these technologies cost above 1 lakh each. And therefore, what has been suggested as a solution in Punjab and Haryana is to have a shared community access to both of these technologies. However, it is yet to be implemented by the government of Haryana and Punjab in an effective manner within their respective states. Now, another aspect that you should understand is why does stubble burning only affect northern India and not southern India? Now, the main reason that stubble burning mainly affects northern part of India is because farmers in northern India have to sow the wheat crop within 15 to 20 days after harvesting the paddy crop. The farmers in North India cannot wait for the paddy stubble to be removed through natural causes, and therefore the farmers in northern India indulge in the quickest manner of removing stubble, which is burning. And this is the reason as to why stubble burning and the pollution caused through stubble burning affects majorly only northern part of India. wherein farmers in northern part of India have to sow the wheat crop within 15 to 20 days after harvesting the paddy crop. And for this, they have to remove the stubble that is present in the field in a quick manner. And because of this, the farmers in northern India burn the stubble that is lying on the ground since it is the quickest and the cheapest manner to do so. So now hopefully you've understood and also revised the various aspects with regards to stubble burning. Now let us understand the various measures which have been highlighted by the author to reduce pollution, especially in the Delhi NCR region. Now the first measure which has been highlighted by the author is to find alternatives to stubble burning. Apart from this, the author is also recommending that there should be strict sanctions in case any farmer does not follow the ban on stubble burning. But you have already understood the various alternatives to stubble burning and also the various problems with imposing sanctions on farmers with regards to banning of stubble burning. The second point highlighted by the author is to impose a blanket ban on firecrackers. Now, as some of you may already know, the Supreme Court has already put a ban on firecrackers, and the Supreme Court has already said that green crackers should be made available. The third measure which has been recommended by the author is to impose a blanket ban on all vehicles exceeding the prescribed tailgate emission standards. And similarly, the government should also form stricter norms for fuels. Now, as some of you may already know, the government has already announced that it is going to introduce the BS6 fuel within India, whereby currently the BS4 fuel is being used, and the government of India has already skipped the BS5 fuel norms and is going to directly implement the BS6 norms, whereby this is going to ensure that there is a less release or a decreased release of pollutants from burning of petrol and diesel. The fifth recommendation given by the author is to open all toll roads where trucks should be excluded and high occupancy vehicles should be exempted from toll. The sixth recommendation given by the author to reduce pollution is to provide a separate bus lane to reduce congestion. Now, those of you who may be from Delhi may already know that the PRT corridor was introduced within Delhi itself. However, this PRT corridor within Delhi came to be a major failure and had to be removed from the major roads in Delhi. However, it should also be noted in that various other cities PRT corridor has been successful, and it was also seen in that several countries such as Mexico, BRT corridor has been very successful in reducing congestion and also in reducing pollution. The seventh point highlighted by the author is to create a separate fund in the budget to specially deal with the pollution crisis. The eighth point provided by the author is to provide agricultural subsidies to farmers so as to disincentivize crop burning. Now, again, this is one of the solutions to stubble burning. The ninth point given by the author is to improve the drainage system to reduce pollution. Whereby what is seen is that major cities, especially Delhi, has a large number of open drains. And these open drains release a lot of toxic pollutants within the atmosphere. Now, the 10th and the last point given by the author is to incentivize the use of renewable energy. Now, as you already may know, that India has already given the target for 2021 to 2022 for an increased consumption of power from renewable energy, whereby India is investing heavily in solar energy, wind energy, and other forms of renewable energy. Now, these are the 10 generalized points which have been highlighted by the author as measures to reduce pollution within India. Now, stubble burning and these measures should be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 3 within the section Environment and within the subsection Environmental Pollution. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 5. Now, what is required to be understood from this article is what is a tendered vote. Now, tendered votes have been defined under the Conduct of Election Rules of 1961. Now, let's say if you have gone to the voting booth and you already see that someone has already casted a vote based on your name, then what would you do? Now, in that case, a voter is allowed to cast a tendered vote, whereby if someone else representing that person has already cast that vote, then what would happen is that the presiding officer would allow the actual voter to vote after ensuring that he has been provided with the correct identity. So let's say if someone has casted a vote within your name, then what you would do is go to the presiding officer. Then this presiding officer would first ensure that you have the correct identity and that someone else has actually voted under your name. And after providing your identity to the presiding officer, he would allow you to give a tendered vote. Now, after the presiding officer is satisfied with the identity papers that you have provided and is allowing you to cast a tendered vote, then what would happen is that you would be provided with a ballot paper, and this ballot paper would have the endorsement of the presiding officer. Now, when we say the endorsement of the presiding officer, it basically means that this ballot paper which has been provided with you would have the term written tendered vote on its back side, and it would also be signed and stamped by the presiding officer. And it means that this tender vote has the endorsement of the presiding officer. Now, after you have been provided a ballot paper with the endorsement of the presiding officer, what you would do is go inside the polling booth and mark the symbol of your favored candidate on the ballot paper. And after this, you should give this ballot paper back to the presiding officer, who shall place it in a special cover. Now, this is a main difference that you need to understand. Now, the presiding officer will not place this ballot paper inside the ballot box. But what the presiding officer would do is place it in a cover specially kept for the purpose of tendered votes. Now, these are the basic informations that you needed to understand with regards to what is a tendered vote. And you need to understand this from the perspective of your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 1. Now, what is happening is the CSIR, or the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, is undertaking a project to have the genome sequenced of 1000 rural students within India. Now, CSIR is undertaking this project, but the sequencing of genome would be undertaken by the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology and the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology. Now, the main purpose of this project is to educate a generation of students on the usefulness of genomics. Now, apart from this, the project would also be providing information to the 1000 students who are participating on the unique genetic traits and their closeness or resilience to particular diseases. Apart from this project would also help to map the population diversity. Now, what is saying is that these 1000 students who are participating in this project would be taken from all over India, and they would be from different regional and ethnic backgrounds. And therefore, this project would also help in mapping the population diversity. Now, these are the main points that you needed to understand with regards to this CSIR project. Now, you have to understand that the concept of genome sequencing has been known for quite a while, and several questions have already been asked in your prelims examination, whereby the first question was asked in the prelims examination of 2011, and the second question was asked in the prelims examination of 2017, whereby the first question asked on how does the knowledge of DNA sequencing benefit us, whereby the correct answer to this question is D 1, 2 and 3, whereby through DNA sequencing it would be possible to know the pedigree of livestock, it is possible to understand the causes of all human diseases, and lastly, it is also possible to develop disease-resistant animal breeds. Now, with regards to the question asked in 2017, it had asked on how genome sequencing can be used in the field of agriculture. Now, the correct answer to this question, as provided by UPSC answer keys, is D 1, 2 and 3, whereby genome sequencing can be used to identify the genetic markers for disease, whereby the CSI project on genome sequencing would also provide the participants information with regards to their unique genetic traits and their closeness and resilience to various diseases. Now, within this context, you need to understand that a question on genome sequencing has just recently been asked in the prelims of 2017, and you have to understand that questions are very rarely repeated within the prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 7. Now, what this article is highlighting is that the Supreme Court is hearing a plea with regards to the electoral law which denies under-tribes and convicts their right to vote. Now, you have to understand that this news in itself is in transition. However, what we'll try to understand from this article are the various exceptions to the right to vote. Now, Article 326 of the Constitution of India provides that any citizen would be disqualified under the Constitution of India or any law that has been made by the legislature on the grounds of non-residence, unsoundness of mind, crime or corrupt or illegal practice. And therefore, these are the exceptions that have been given to the right to vote under Article 326 of the Constitution of India. Apart from this, it has also been provided in Section 16 of the Representations of People Act of 1950 that a person would be disqualified for registration in an electoral roll if he is not a citizen of India, is of unsound mind, and has been declared so by a competent court, or has been disqualified from voting due to corrupt practices or other offences in connection with elections. Apart from this, it has been provided in the Representations of People Act of 1951. Now, no person shall vote in any election if he is confined in a prison. However, if a person has been subjected to preventive detention, then that person would still have the right to vote. Now, this is a common fact that you should know that if a person is in preventive detention, then he still carries his right to vote. Now, these are the main points that you needed to know as to what are the exceptions to right to vote. And so, now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this editorial from page 9. Now, this editorial basically consists of an interview in a question answer format. And what it basically talks about is the Model Code of Conduct. Now, information with regards to the Model Code of Conduct has been covered in depth and comprehensively by Navid sir in the Daily News Simplified video of 11th of March. So, if you need to understand about the Model Code of Conduct, then you can refer to the Daily News Simplified video of 11th of March. Now, there is a particular question with regards to the Model Code of Conduct that needs to be understood. And the question asks, should the Model Code of Conduct or the MCC be enacted into a law? Now, the answer that has been given to this question is no, that Model Code of Conduct should not be made into a law. And the main reason given for not making the Model Code of Conduct into a law is first, that by making it into a law, it would increase the legal tangles. Now, what is currently being seen is that the Election Commission has various flexibility while implementing the Model Code of Conduct. But by making the Model Code of Conduct into a law, it would decrease the flexibility of the Election Commission to implement the MCC. Thirdly, by making MCC into a law, it would increase the participation of the judiciary in interpreting the Model Code of Conduct, and thereby it would increase the total time taken to resolve issues. Now, currently, because the Election Commission has flexibility in implementation of Model Code of Conduct, it is able to take decisions quickly. However, if the Model Code of Conduct is made into a law, then it would be up to the judiciary to interpret the MCC, and thereby it would increase the time in resolution of disputes with regards to the Model Code of Conduct. Now, these are the three main reasons given in the answer as to why the Model Code of Conduct should not be made into a law. And so now with this, let us move on to the next section. Now, there are two questions for your practice, and what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now, the correct answer to question number 1 is D, 1, 2 and 3, whereby all the three countries oversaw a regime change caused by the Arab Spring. Now, with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is C, 1 and 2, whereby Sudan does not border the Mediterranean Sea. Now, there are two more questions for your practice, and as you already understand, what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now, with regards to question number 3, the correct answer is D, Happy Seeder Machine, whereby the Happy Seeder Machine is an effective alternative to stubble burning. Now, with regards to question number 4, the correct answer is C, 3 only, whereby the tendered vote is conducted through a ballot paper, and therefore the statement number 1 is wrong. While with regards to statement number 2, permission to grant tender vote can also be given by the presiding officer, while tendered vote is applicable in the election to Council of State. And therefore the correct answer is C, 3 only. And now with this we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.